Thank you so much. I want to thank Tom and Travis for everything they do here. Tom mentioned I live in Atlanta. I've been coming to these readings. I think I was at the very first one. So it's been a big part of my life since I've lived here. And it's really an honor to be reading tonight. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay. All right, I'm going to start with a poem about poetry. And I'm going to be reading mostly new work, a few things from my book. This first poem is called Unused Lines. While words we pamper and protect march off in search of meager fame, these lines, like bastard kids, collect, skulking through our notes in shame, the discards of our intellect, false starts, limp rhymes, feet bruised and lame, condemned to suffer in neglect, half-breeds that we refuse to name, for fear they'll prove what we suspect, the damned and saved are much the same. And speaking of the damned, next poem is inspired by my childhood in Miami. I grew up in kind of the height of the Miami Vice days. I was in elementary school, and the system back then was everybody, you went to neighborhood elementary schools, and then everybody was piped into this enormous mega school for 6th grade. And so you were sort of split up from everybody that you had known all the way, kindergarten through 5th grade. And I was the good kid, and so I was used to separate the bad boys. So this is a true poem. The names have been changed to protect the guilty. This is called The 6th Grade Lunchroom. Dante comes close, hell's storm of whirling cries, raw filth, skulls gnawing skulls, the vacant eyes of damned divided into gloomy lots. Only our tortured souls gnawed tater tots, canned corn, and tepid piles of graying meat. Boy, girl, our class was forced to eat, bound to our seats by threat of study hall. We tasted greater freedom in the fall, but by the winter break, our reputation for airborne food and moral degradation drove Miss O'Toole, of failing mind and heart, to curse our names and make a seating chart. God knows what sins condemned me to my place, exiled from quiet and a friendly face, sandwiched between James Scott and Melvin Eames, two petty thieves whose prepubescent dreams were built on pyromania and shooting. They sang to me of gang warfare and looting, stories they'd likely stolen off the street, like mockingbirds who, though they just repeat another song, assault with greater noise, Melvin and James were squawking little boys impersonating men. I know this now, but then I sat with knotted hands and brow, awaiting all the horrid things that they'd say, the foul stuff they smeared across my tray. While I shot pleading looks to Miss O'Toole, oblivious, James dove into a pool of milk sloshed on his plate. Melvin fought back with fork and knife, a swift counterattack of thick pâtés of gum and tuna fish, cold soggy fries, and that day's mystery dish. I saw eternity in every lunch, as Melvin's mashed potatoes drowned in punch, and James reached out to pinch my scrawny knees. But all I have at last are memories, whose teeth grow duller with each passing year, till now the grinning faces aren't as clear as what they ate. For we soon left O'Toole's haphazard watch, were bused to separate schools and separate lives, and I can't say what fate befell the boys I loved so much to hate. The way they talked, it's not too far a leap to doubt that they'll die old or in their sleep, but maybe they survived their circumstances, went on to calculus and high school dances, careers in corporate law or real estate, and better skills with napkin, knife, and plate. Whatever lives they chose, I see the two at 12, before a trembling tray of goo, that pair who made my meals a living hell. I think of them now and almost wish them well. I'm going to read another poem from, it's a similar time period. This is a childhood poem called Fire Ants. Squatting in the coppery mud of the drainage ditch behind my cousin's house, we searched for fish, saw none. We found a speckled frog instead, unspooling a long, gelatinous thread of black eggs in the water. Then fire ants, my feet ablaze with pain, a fumbling dance, and fact and memory begin to stutter. What happened next? What curses did I utter? And how did I ever get back over the fence? I remember having a kind of reverence for the whole affair. The pity I got, each bite growing large and lustrous as a pearl, my tight and swollen toes. I must have liked the pain. What else would make me prod again, again? A whole week hobbling barefoot on the lawn, and still I missed the welts when they were gone. I brought that poem into a workshop, and the workshop leader described it as being pathological. That was kind of interesting. Somebody here in the audience was in that workshop, so I've come to realize that some of my sort of, I guess you would say, poetic obsessions or themes that I go back to over and over again, sort of random order here, are animals or pests, love, travel, food, and failure. And usually not all at the same time, but often in some, combination. So this is another poem that takes place in an eating establishment. This gets a little bit nicer than the 6th grade lunchroom. This is a true story. And there are some references to some classic rock songs. I think everybody should pick up on them. And this is called The Talker. The details of his story aren't the point, nor is the listener, who looked as bored as we, two accidental eavesdroppers in a London restaurant. The point is, well, his point, which, after 10 long minutes, he came to abruptly and with a flourish, saying slowly and in perfect seriousness, all we are is dust in the wind. All we are is dust in the wind. I think we bit our fingers to keep from laughing. I know we mocked him through Paris, Barcelona, Rome, and even years later, when one of us became a little too serious, the other would turn and quote his quote again, jabbing the air as he had jabbed the air. I picture him still sitting in some cafe, proclaiming we were always born to run, or urging wayward sons to carry on the way we tried to carry on, that couple at the next table who couldn't help but listen with so little of our own to talk about. And this is another London-based poem. A friend of mine is a British poet, and he mentioned one time that he had been asked to write a poem about growing up in London, and he was just stumped about what he would write. And I thought, I lived in London for a semester in college. And I thought, if I ever wrote a poem about London, I would make it a sonnet, an English sonnet. And anyway, I just sort of set this challenge up for myself. This poem is called English Sonnet. It is, in fact, a Shakespearean sonnet. There are 2 references in it to London transportation. I don't think there's anything challenging here, but the tube is the London subway system. And there's a bus referenced in the poem that would be one of those, red double-deckers. And there is a joke in this poem. It's not a funny joke, so don't feel like you need to laugh when I get to it, because it'll probably throw me off. It's called English Sonnet. London returns in damp, fragmented flurries when I should be doing something else. A scrap of song, a pink scarf, and I'm back to curries and pub food, long, wet walks without a map, bouts of bronchitis, a case of the flu, my half-hearted studies, and brooding thoughts, and scanning the faces in every bar for you. The Those months come down to moments or small plots, like the bum on the tube, enraged that no one spoke. He raved and spat, the whole car thick with dread, only to ask, "Won't someone tell a joke?" And this mouse of a woman offered, "What's big and red and sits in the corner?" A naughty bus. Not funny, I know, but neither's the story of us. This next poem, I'm a little nervous about reading. This next poem has sexual content in it, and after hearing that there was a reverend in the audience and somebody studying divinity, so I'm a little nervous. I decided, yeah, my mother's here. But I'm going to read it and ask forgiveness afterwards, but I apologize for the offense. This is called Sweet Nothings. After gimlets and cosmopolitans, we're on to sex and its catastrophes. Susan telling about the time she ordered a paycheck's worth of Italian lingerie. She dressed slowly, she says, feeling only a little ridiculous as she slid one gartered leg across the coffee table. Looking up, her husband asked if she could stop locking the TV. Blushing, Nancy reveals how she whispered filthy things, she won't say what, into a boyfriend's ear at a boring party, and he pretended to have been struck deaf. We find that the old wounds feel a little softer with a laugh track, so the stories keep coming, our urge to talk as primal as sex itself. Then Laura says that she can top us all. In grad school, she worked as a dominatrix. Easy money, she says. No sex, just power. And when we hear her hourly, we're wondering why we aren't all wielding whips and riding boots. Until she arrives at how she lost the job. It is the middle of the afternoon, and in a downtown loft, she is handed a mouse. He wanted me to kill it as he came, she says. I told him sexuality can't trump a life, and he said he owned me for the hour. They only play at giving up control. There is no bitterness in her voice, no laughter either. It hangs there, a small warmth beating in the dark, her story joining the ones we've told and the ones that we can't tell. And who among us will feel most naked in the morning, having sacrificed lovers or selves to the narrative arc? We split the check, and no one asks what happened to the mouse. I had a very difficult year a couple of years ago. Actually, particularly this one very difficult week where I was married. My husband and I separated in the same week that my husband moved out. 2 days later, I got a letter from the IRS saying that there was a mistake on our taxes and we owed an additional $10,000. And which turned out actually to be a mistake on the part of the IRS, but the burden of proof was on us. So it was a really, really, really difficult time. And I was telling somebody about it, and they said, "My God, what a raft of grief." And that phrase just stuck with me. I had this vision of, there actually being this little boat, that I could just sort of pile everything on and send it away. So this poem begins with an epigraph from the Morris Dictionary of Word and Phrase Origins, which reads, "The raft that means a great number is not related at all to the raft that carries people or their possessions in the water." The two words are homonyms. A raft of grief. If only there were a boat, low and long, and loaded with all we brought or built, the fatal inattentions, anxieties and tics that time had sanctified, our good and bad intentions, rages, lapses, and aches. If only it were that easy to stand only ankle deep in the sullied water, hoisting our shared cargo, sinking no further beneath its weight. If only the boat did not need a rower, we'd push it off together, then wade to opposite banks, absolved at last, forever, buoyant watching it go. And I'm going to read one other divorce poem, and then a couple more. This is just a list. It's called What Was Left. The headboard to the guest room bed, its mattress gone, the buckled frame still joined to one unyielding bolt. 3 pairs of wrinkled dress pants wadded at the bottom of the hamper, 6 black t-shirts, an IBM circa 1986. A snorkel, mask and fins, white socks, loose change, a broken film projector, the television. Restaurant matchbooks, tax records and old license plates, boxes and bags of photographs. Venice, Vienna, Kadakis, the way that they once lived, the notes and valentines, sporting forever and always a jar of sauerkraut. And onto, I'm going to end on 2 shorter, slightly more upbeat poems. This is actually another list, I suppose. This is called In Praise of the Florida Manatee. Propeller scarred and hugely obsolete lover of all things slow, too slow in love, your copulation being no simple feat, fat disregarder of the world above that lower realm of tepid blue-green murk that winds from springs to waters further south, unlikely gymnast, Darwinian quirk, heir to the dodo's fate, the dinosaurs, a future fairy tale, a constant mouth pausing mid-bite to snooze along seafloors, long-suffering forgiver of abuse, ungainly blend of elephant and cow, and bearer of an old man's battered brow. You ask for nothing, serve no earthly use. You simply live and are, and show us how. And I'm going to close on a very new poem. Is there anybody in here who speaks Polish? Good. Because there are some Polish phrases that I'm probably going to butcher. My boyfriend and I took Polish for beginners over the summer, and this is about that experience. The poem is called Acquisitions, and it begins with the quote from Miłosz that says, it's from the poem called Love. It doesn't matter whether he knows what he serves. Who serves best doesn't always understand. Acquisitions. Having learned each other's bodies and habits, we turn improbably to Polish, language of Miłosz and Szymborska, language of consonant clusters unyielding. Before our first class, we imagine translations and travel. We think it will be romantic to struggle together. But language comes less easily than love, which is difficult enough, but does not have 7 cases. Each week, our instructor plays the anthem with gusto and weeps, cursing the Russians. Each week, when I should be watching her mouth, I study my lover's mouth, whispering, whispering, Koham che, while he takes notes. When friends ask how we are doing, I say, Dzień dobry, which doesn't mean well, or even poorly, but good day. In class, we practice dialogues, tongues straining to follow Alice and Tomek to the bank, the market, the discotheque. The more we learn, the more we lose, words and syntax slipping from us, until, giving up all hope of mastery, we go back to what we can practice and get right, returning to the breath, the body, the beautiful, knowable bed. Thank you very much.